This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Darrell Sims, the running backs coach at Cincinnati. Coach Sims discusses his development as a coach, where he has seen growth, and the transition to Cincinnati. If you like this podcast, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new episodes each week. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Sims.
Coach Sims, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, man. I hope you're all set up there in Cincinnati. Congratulations on the transition, man. Super excited for you and that program.
Appreciate it. All good right now.
Yes, sir. Well, hey, let's go ahead and dive on into this thing. I know we had you on a couple years ago, and we were able to talk really specifically about just your role as a running back coach and how you've grown in that position and all that kind of stuff. This one, I want to, talk about a little bit about your career, all the places that you've been, and some of the special spots and some of these special, unique moments that you've had as a coach coming up through the profession. And so, with that being said, you've really pulled yourself apart from a lot of other running back coaches in the country, and you're really one of the top running back coaches in terms of performance on the field and just your trajectory over the past decade. You played the position, coached the position, you were state championship in high school at the position, national championship at JMU with your running back just being one of the best in the country. Kind of keep going on and on and on. But what people might not know is that your first coaching gig, you were not a running backs coach. You were actually a linebacker coach as a student assistant. Just talk to us a little bit about how unique that was to kind of get out of your comfort zone and coach a position that you have not coached before, not played before, or maybe you played that before. I might be speaking too soon there, but that you have not coached before. How did you prepare yourself? How did you stand in front of those rooms, get those guys ready to play for you with a huge lack of experience in that capacity?
So for me, I was fortunate because I was working for a head coach at the time, but that was also the defensive coordinator. So we went through a transitional period where the head coach that I played for in college left to take a high school head coaching job. Then our defensive coordinator became the head coach. So in that transition, he said, I'm going to place you on defense to help expand you as an offensive coach. So it's going to continue to help you from a developmental standpoint. And he kind of set me down and told me what the process would be in terms of the guys that you are now coaching or the guys that you played with. So you have to separate yourself from being a player to now being a coach. He did a really good job of taking me under his wing and teaching me the things that I needed to know from a fundamental standpoint of coaching linebackers. But I also reached out to people that I knew, whether it was my high school coaches from previous stops or guys that I had worked with or had coached me in college on the defense side of the ball. So I got with them and kind of put together my teach progression. And then just went in the room and just really laid the foundation of giving those guys the truth. Listen, I don't have all the answers as a linebackers coach, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow. And if there's something that I do not know, I'm going to go find an answer for you. Yeah. But just did a really good job of being open and transparent and then just giving it everything that I had. I did a really good job of just learning coverages, starting in the back end first and understanding how that fit with the front end. Yeah. And then try to teach them guys holistically. And we just had a bunch of fun. And, the blessing was in spring, I coached the inside linebackers. Then we got the fall and I transitioned to coaching the outside linebackers because we hired a inside linebacker special teams coordinator. So I was fortunate to be able to coach both spots. Yeah. So that was huge in my growth.
Did it hold to be true what your head coach was, kind of hoping for, that it did help you when it was all said and done, that helped you become a better running back coach, understanding that back end, the front end, and all that kind of stuff?
It did, because now I understood what defenses are trying to do to attack us offense. So that helped me tremendously in terms of, okay, when we give this particular formation, now the defense is trying to match it with this particular personnel group in the front. So it helped me out tremendously.
Yeah, and I say this as a former running back, as a player. I felt like my biggest growth as a player came when I started understanding what was going on in the defense. Not necessarily this is my gap, this is my hole, read the hole. Yep. When I started saying, hey, that's a 3 technique right there, we're running inside zone, this might make me do this, or hey, that safety is stacked over that outside backer, I better get ready to protect. You know what I mean? When those gears start rolling, man, I really got so much better, man. So understanding all that from a defensive standpoint, do you implement that in your kind of as you coach your running backs? Are you teaching them about the defense side of the ball?
So when we first get in the room, we start to talk defensive structure because I want them to have a base understanding of, here's the 3 different types of defensive fronts that you can get. You're either going to get a 4 down, a 3 down, or you're going to get some form of a 5 down structure. And then we talk about, blitz recognition, how to read blitzes coming, and, from a coverage situation, understanding middle close, middle open, but what are the variations to the coverage?
Right.
So I want them to be able to be smart enough and quick enough in terms of understanding things that, the first time that they see it on the field is not the first time that they've seen it. They've seen it in the meeting room as well.
Absolutely. Now, another thing guys might not know is you left Pikeville, went to Millersville for a little bit, came back to Pikeville. And this time, you had a very unique role added to your title. You were also the JV head coach and offensive coordinator, which I can only imagine. Being a very young guy with that much responsibility. Number one, I'm gonna ask you this question first, then we're gonna talk about how it helped you grow and all this kind of stuff. But what was the hardest thing about that role? From any facet, just what was the hardest thing about doing that you maybe didn't expect?
The hardest role was making sure that we had enough time to practice. So for us, we always had to worry about, the team that was playing on Saturday. So we practiced Tuesday through Thursday. Well, Friday mornings at 6 a.m. was the practice time for the JV team. So we practiced one time a week.
Oh, wow.
So it was basically you're coming out there for 2 hours. You're practicing on both sides of the ball, but you're also not putting in a lot of different things because you don't have a lot of time to scout who you're getting ready to play. We only played 4 games that season. So you're doing enough base stuff to where the kids got a clear understanding to be able to go out there and have some success. But at the same time, making sure that you got everybody on the same page. But you're not trying to toe the line with what the head coach is giving to the entire team. So you're trying to make sure you're delivering the same message that the head coach has laid out for the entire team because you don't want to feel like it's 2 different teams. Even though you've been in charge of this, you still want to relay the same message that the head coach is presenting.
Amen. Well, having that experience, once again, I ask you, how did it help you develop as a running back coach? But more importantly, as you continue down your path here, at some point in time, you're going to be calling plays again. At some point in time, you're going to be a head coach. What were those? How do you anticipate that experience helping out the future? And then how has it helped you out be a better running back coach?
Going into it the first time and you stand on that sideline and everything's on you now, and you're there calling plays. So in your mentality, you're thinking score as fast as you can, but you have to make sure you're doing a really good job of managing the entire team, but also managing the game as well. So understanding that you have to play complementary football on all 3 phases. And then in that situation, what are you trying to really get accomplished on each drive? It's no bad thing that you end the drive for the kick and you have to punt, but also at the same time, like we were going up against Georgia Military in the game and we had the lead. So you're taking the air out the ball so that you can preserve the win. The thing that helped me tremendously was understanding to where now you're sitting on the sideline and you're the head coach of this JV program. What situations are you being in from a situational football standpoint to make sure that you're giving your team the best chance to go out here and win? And understanding that there's a lot of things that go on during that headset during the game. So that helped me grow tremendously. But also just being able to understand that I didn't have all the answers like I thought I did. Standing out there on that sideline and leaning on the assistant coaches, but also giving them power and control to do the things that they needed to do to help us be successful.
Absolutely, man. You said something I think is profound there because, as a coach, there's so many ways to develop, right? You can go learn some schemes offensively or defensively. I can hit you up and get some great running back drills and some great running back room management. But one thing that's tough to grow it is like game management. All of a sudden, when you are that head ball coach and you're talking about 4-minute drill, how much time do we have left to kneel the ball? Just all these things that you're sitting there at. I'm sure you went through hundreds of these moments as a coach, but you weren't the one making the decision. You're sitting there worried about, hey, is my number 1 running back good, or he just hurt his shoulder on special teams or whatever. You're trying to figure that part out, and you're letting the coach manage, and all of a sudden you're a head ball coach and you're making some of these decisions, and you don't have that great experience. So now I love that you pointed that out, because that's something me and Coach Barry have a ton of dialogue on, is just learning about game management. Now, I want to kind of transition here. You've worked your way up and through the profession over the past I guess about 14, 15 years here. Spending a couple of years at 7 different programs. I understand each stop is special for its own reason, whether it's this is where I met my wife, or got married, or had my first child, or this, that, and the other. But for you, from a growth and development standpoint, which one of those stops were one of those ones where you're like, man, this is where I learned the most. This is where I grew the most?
I would say 2010 at Millersville University, my first job.
Okay.
I had offensive coordinator Brad Mangle, who took me under his wing and taught me offensive football, and really wanted to help me become a coordinator, and gave me a ton of input. In Division II football, he was a middle school principal. So during the day, he wasn't in the office. So we were a West Coast style on offense, and we were evolving to go into a little bit more up-tempo. And he gave me a ton of ability to be able to do some things that we did in college when I was playing, that, I had some familiarity with, and be able to implement those things. But also at the same time, when he wasn't in the office, it was my job to make sure everything was ready for practice. So when he got there at 2:30, there was no hiccups. Yeah. So I was in charge of making sure that the wristbands were, correct for the quarterbacks, and the play call sheet was correct for him with the scripts. But also at the same time, if he wasn't able to come in until later on, I would have to sit here and meet with my tight ends, but also do a really good job of having to meet with the quarterbacks as well. Wow. In certain days of the week. So that portion was good. And he told me, he said, I'm training you to be an offensive coordinator, but also to have an understanding of, if I'm not here, you're being in charge of running the walkthrough before I get there, or being in charge of meeting with the quarterback. So that was a ton of growth for me. And I was his eyes in the sky. He was on the field. So we had a ton of communication back and forth on the field. So it was a huge, huge learning opportunity. And then we had a wide receivers coach, Dave Keeney, who had been a head coach in the PSAC before, and had been an offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, so I could lean on him and ask him questions from a developmental standpoint. Our head coach, Greg Colby, had worked for Nick Saban at Michigan State and was a phenomenal defensive coach. So that was a ton of growth for me. Yeah. That I feel like I took a tremendous step in that first year.
That's awesome, man, because as I look at kind of your resume and your bio, I would have guessed JMU, I would have guessed Western Carolina, but I think that's awesome when you start pinpointing. It's just 1 year you were there, right? I mean, you weren't there,
just 1 year.
Yeah, you're not even there for a full calendar year, and you're pinpointing as a place early in your career that was super impactful. And I listened to you list all the responsibilities and all the stuff that you almost like you were forced to do. You were forced to be an OC pretty much, at such a young age. And you swap a place around, and all of a sudden, I mean, your career probably goes a little differently, in terms of, being able to learn that much that early on. That's crazy, man. That's awesome. Now, once again, as a relatively young coach in the profession, you mentioned the PSAC Division II level. We talked about Pikeville a little bit, NAIA level. So you've been at NAIA Division II, the FCS, G5, P5, right? You've been on almost every level except the Division III level. Each one of those levels are special. I want you to kind of look at it maybe from a development standpoint or from a young coach standpoint. I know oftentimes I get calls here in my role at the AFCA from a guy that's saying, "Hey, I got this opportunity at GA at LSU or GA at Pueblo in Colorado," and you're like, "Man, take the Pueblo job. I know the LSU thing will be cool, but you're gonna get a ton of responsibility. But you might want to take the LSU job because it could lead to some yada yada yada, right?" What is some of these special things that you felt like you were able to experience at all these different levels that are able to help you grow if you were giving advice to a young coach?
So for me, starting out at the NAIA level and Division II level, you learn how to coach. You got a chance to make all your mistakes because you're not worried about making a mistake in front of 80,000 people. Some games you only had 1,000 people at the game. Yeah. But you learn how to coach and you learn how to manage your room. I had a lot of older coaches that, I remember never going to a meeting without something to write on and having a pen. Always go to practice and make sure you got 2 pens on you. So if you lose one, you still got another. But understanding here's how the way you have to structure your room. And that was trial and error for me because I was young. The thing about it is, like I talked about when I was coaching linebackers, I always went in and said, fellas, I don't have all the answers, but I'll make sure that I'll find the answers for you so that I'm leading you down the right path. So that portion was critical. Also, being an NAIA coach and Division II coach, you learn how to recruit. Because we were sitting there when I was at Pikeville having to recruit and keep 100 players on the roster. So every year you were signing between 30 to 40 players. Same situation when I got to Carson-Newman. It was the same exact deal. So you learn how to recruit because you're typically signing about 10 guys, you know, overall when you're recruiting area. And those guys are paying to come to school to play football.
Yeah.
So you understood the ins and outs of the game from that standpoint. So that portion was very beneficial. And then moving on to FCS, you learned, okay, now you got 63 scholarships. Here's the deals that you're looking for in your room. It's a little bit different now because you are able to give full scholarships. There's still some partials here and there, but it's a different type of athlete that you're looking for. And the competition that you're playing against is really, really good. And so you learn how to recruit at a higher level. And then moving on to the group of 5 level, I mean, some of these recruiting battles, you got to go against some big dogs. Yeah. And you're going to win some and some you're going to lose. Schematically, football is still football. Yeah. You know, it don't matter what level it is, football is still football. And then going on to the Power 5 level is, number one, you're managing personalities in your room because everybody thinks that they're going to the NFL. So you're having to manage guys from that standpoint, but also at the same time, you get into some heated recruiting battles because now you're going for the best of the best.
Yeah.
And you're going to win some of those, you're going to lose some of those. And that, I think, the biggest growth process in recruiting and in coaching is through the failure, especially when you may lose a recruit, but you lose him not necessarily because something that you did wrong. This school may have a better opportunity for him to have early playing time. And you always go back and reevaluate, what can I done better as a recruiter? Same situation that you do as a coach. Right. And then it's vice versa. You know, when you're sitting here developing your guys, I take pride in every single offseason redeveloping myself. You know, going back from the very beginning of fall camp all the way through the season, what things could I have done better? So like after every practice, I come in and I make notes to myself so that now I can go back through and review them. So that every year I'm just starting all over again. What drills do I want to take out? What drills do I want to combine together? How can I evolve as a coach? Where do I feel like my weakness is this year? What strengths do I feel like I have? And what things can I really take to the next level? So try to do that holistically in every area.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting there, so I'm going to ask you a tough question, and you can remove yourself from the universities per se, but I just would love your opinion because I know you served as a Division II recruiting coordinator there at Carson-Newman. You've been a great recruiter at all these universities at the FBS and FCS level. And you start talking about maybe some of the particulars of you know, NAI lower level, you're signing a ton of kids, and all of a sudden, you know, when you're at those P5 levels, you're not – you got about 3 or 4 kids that you might know that you really want to go after, and it's about the battle a little bit more. From your perspective, with the vast difference of it, like what's harder? What has been the more challenging one for you?
To be honest with you, when I was at Division II, because at that level, those kids are having to take out student loans, and then they're having to pay out of pocket, and the hard conversations, you know, come down to when you have a player that really wants to come to your institution, but you know from a family financial situation, it's going to be extremely hard on them. Yeah. So that's where the human element comes into play in terms of, man, we really want you here, but this is only as much as we can give you from a scholarship standpoint. This is how much you're going to have to pay out of pocket. So then you kind of put it in the hands of the family, but also at the same time, you don't want to see the family struggle just for that young man to come to school. So that to me was the hardest deal because, you know, and like when we were at Pikeville, we had so much turnover every year to where the core of the roster, you try to keep the same and keep consistent. But at the same time, you had turnover to where you're bringing in 50 to 60 new kids every single year. Mm-hmm. So that's the part that was extremely hard.
Yeah. Now, you joined Coach Satterfield's staff in 2021 at Louisville. You guys had the great opportunity to go over to Cincinnati. He gives you a ring and says, "Hey, man, I want you and the family to come along," or, you know, however that conversation went. You know, you don't have to get into the exact details. I'm sure that might want to be private, but, you know, how does that happen? I know you're in limbo for a little bit. I know you're seeing everything happen. How does it go down? How do you go and talk to the wife about it? How do you make a conscious decision about what's next for you in the profession as you're moving through?
Yeah, so for us, we had a staff meeting on that Monday morning, and Coach Sack came in and told everybody that he was taking the Cincinnati job, and he would be in contact with everybody and let them know kind of what the situation is once he got, his feet on the ground here. So me and my wife had already kind of talked about it a little bit from the standpoint of, if something happens, what would we want to do? And it was no ifs, fans, or buts about it. If we had the opportunity to go, that we were going to go.
Right.
So he gives me a call. That was on Monday. I'm sitting in my office on Wednesday. We actually getting started with bowl prep, which was a crazy time because Cincinnati's playing Louisville in the bowl game.
Oh, man, so, and I missed that part of the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, so Cincinnati's playing Louisville in the bowl game. So I'm sitting in the office on Wednesday getting ready to get started with that, and he calls me. And with Coach Sack, man, what you see is what you get. He is even keeled as they come until that doggone ball gets put down. Then it becomes very competitive. And he called me. He said, "What you doing, Bo?" I said, "I'm sitting here in the office and getting ready to go to practice." He said, "Well, we need to get you over here in Cincinnati and get you in some Cincinnati gear so you can start recruiting." I said, "All right, Coach, I'll be there tonight." So got off the phone and packed up my office and then up the road I went. So the easy part was an hour and 30 minutes up the road from where we were in Louisville. So that portion was easy.
So how does the rest of as far as the bowl part goes? So clearly you don't coach Louisville in the bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
You're in Cincinnati. Clearly you don't coach there yet, right? So
yep.
when that bowl game comes on, what do you do? Did you just watch as a fan, or are you evaluating that personnel? What did that look like?
So that had to be the weirdest portion of the whole entire transition because they're practicing while we're here. So we're in Coach Sack's office the whole entire time, not trying to be in the way and be disrespectful or anything like that and feel like you're trying to give away secrets for the game plan or anything. So we did a really good job of just, being here and getting a chance to know the kids. Yeah. The first thing that I did, and I didn't want to overstep my boundaries from that standpoint, but we all asked Coach Carey, would he mind if we got a chance to sit down and talk with some of the kids just to get to know him? He was really, really good with that. And had an opportunity to get to know those young men very, very quickly. And then sitting back watching the bowl game, we were actually here in the office, in Coach Sack's office, watching the bowl game.
Okay.
That was the first time you actually get a chance to sit back as a fan and watch the game.
Right.
And so you sitting there, you looking, and you like, dang, them boys really is pretty good. Yeah. Like, when you sit here looking at your former players,
right.
and then, you sit here looking at your new players, you're like, okay. And so that was the deal, because when you in it, and you know this, when you sitting there week in and week out and you coaching the guys, you trying to find the mistakes, you're trying to find things to get them better. So then when you take that step back, it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I like what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, that's funny, man. I found myself in the office here, and I cut on a 2015, ULM versus whatever, or Davidson versus whatever, and I just sit there and watch a game from that vantage point, to where it's like, man, you know what? Let me just watch what happened. Not necessarily, like you said, my back miss a hold, and my wide receiver not force outside release, and man, it's just such a different perspective. And I do not like it. I will say that. I enjoy it from the eyes that you look at it at. Now, I
was proud of my GA. My GA was coaching in the bowl game. He was coaching them up in the bowl game. Larry Dace was coaching them up, so I was proud of the way they rushed for a ton of yards. So I was like, hey, man, you're a better coach than me.
There you go, man. That's exciting, man. I didn't know that went down like that, so that's super unique. I'm happy we dove into that. Now, I had a question for you. You kind of alluded to it just a little bit, but I was talking about when you started there in Cincinnati. What are the first things that you do? And honestly, since you kind of talked about you did take the opportunity to meet the players while they were in that bowl prep. I changed the question just a little bit. I was going to. What do you do to get yourself ready to go recruit at a new place? You've done this 7 times, or maybe potentially 8 times. What do you do to get yourself prepared to go walk into school and for mama to say, what's Cincinnati's graduation rate? Some of those questions that you get about universities. Yeah. How do you prepare yourself to know all this information?
You go through and you use Google and go through the research on Cincinnati.
Yeah.
For one, when you're in that transition, especially like the first night that I got here, and you're in the hotel, and I haven't been on campus yet, so I'm trying to go find the quick facts on the university.
Yeah.
What are the predominant majors that are here on campus? What is the academic support like? What is the campus environment and campus life like all the way around? How many students do you have? And the things that the mamas are going to ask and really want to have the answers for. And then once we got here, the academic support team did a phenomenal job of onboarding us with the information that we needed to be able to go tell the truthful facts about every situation and go from there. And then looking at the roster, looking at my running back room, how many guys are we losing? Who's coming back? How many guys do we need? I was fortunate. I came in and they already had a running back committed. So I didn't have to go out there and sign one in a hurry. So that portion was good. But then it was just getting to know those guys, getting to know the players in the room and developing a relationship with them and letting them know that, hey, right now, go attack this bowl game. When you get back, then we'll do a really good job of sitting down and going through everything that we need to.
Yeah, so you brought up something interesting there. You said they already had a running back committed. Now, this is not, potentially this could have been a guy that Darrell Sims might not recruit. This might not be the type of running back that you love and that you like. I spend time as a running back coach. I'm pretty sure me and you could watch the same film and see two totally different things, which I know you know that and I know that, right? How did you handle that, right? You already got a guy signed. Did you sit down and watch his film and make sure this is what you wanted, or did you kind of roll with it, or what?
No, I sit down and me and Coach Satterfield sit down and watch the tape to see if he fit what we do offensively.
Yeah.
And when we said, okay, he does, then I got to know the young man. Now, it was like speed dating. Because signing day was 1 week away. So we sit down and really got to know him. And then I went down and saw him and spent time with him and his family so that they could get to know me and that they felt comfortable with me.
Right.
Because during that transitional period, they're going a week and they haven't heard from anybody because the coach hasn't been announced. So just putting them at ease. So that's the number one deal is looking at guys. And the recruiting department here did a really good job of having film on every player that was on the roster. So that we could take a look at. So you got some familiarity with you guys and what the talent and skill set is. So we went about it and we attacked it and went from there.
Well, Coach, man, before I let you go here, I really appreciated your time. I want to talk about the 35 under 35. You've been a part of that program a few years back. I know something that you hold to high regards. And more importantly for me specifically, you've did a tremendous job of just giving back to us, man, helping us out whenever we've been in a pinch with speakers or, helping out with our virtual clinic and all that kind of stuff. Number one, what did the 35 under 35 program mean to you? And then number two, why is it important for you to be involved with the AFCA and give back to us in the way that you have?
35 under 35 is tremendously dear to me because I had a chance to come in and learn from a lot of really, really good coaches that I looked up to from the beginning when I started coaching. But also at the same time, the peers that you're in the room with, a lot of those guys have risen so fast that you're sitting here looking like you watching on Saturday nights. And even on some Sundays, those are guys that have been 35 under 35 with me. And look at the job that they're doing now that's really, really good.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a tremendous resource for young coaches as they come in because you don't know what you don't know. And the information that you guys presented to us in terms of growth and development, understanding about if you want to go be a head coach at this level, here's the things that you need to do. And then being able to listen to James Franklin, David Cutcliffe, the wisdom that they bestowed upon us was really, really good. Being able to give back, for me, it's a young coach sitting in the room just like I was that wants to grow and wants to learn. So for me, I feel like if I can impart just one thing, I'm doing a really good job. So I'm always, anytime I got free time or my schedule allows, I'm always going to be able to give back to the AFCA and continue to help this thing grow because I think it's a tremendous organization. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for me going to my very first clinic in 2011 when the Future Minority Coaches Association program that you guys had back then, if I wasn't a part of that in Dallas. So that kicked off a lot for me.
Oh, so that Dallas Anatole in 2011, that was your first one?
That was my very first convention. I was in that program and had an opportunity, and I was starstruck, walking through the lobby and seeing a lot of guys on TV. So that was a really, really good deal. And it was a growth situation for me.
Yeah, man, that's funny because that was my first one there at Dallas Anatole. It was snowing like crazy. We hadn't been back since, all that good stuff, and that's been one of my go-to questions on the podcast is just revisiting that first one, and everybody all has the same response. You're starstruck, you're a little intimidated, man, and as you rewind back to that 2011 convention, now sitting here at 2023 as a running back for a P5 school in the Big 12, did you think you could make it? I know us coaches and former football players, like we're built to like with that little bit of arrogance and ego that of course we were going to make it, but just in reality, in that moment when you were sitting there looking around, would you ever thought you'd be in this point in your career?
I did, just because of, me being a very faith-based driven person.
Yeah.
And I always have spoken into his power in the tongue, just like the Bible says. But I also knew that I had to keep my head down and keep working.
Right.
And then be around really, really good coaches and really, really good people. The key thing that I learned early on is go surround yourself with winners. If you go get with a head coach that's about the right stuff and he's a winner, you're going to learn a lot of good things, because success leaves clues. And that's the thing that I picked up on, like going to work for Ken Sparks at Carson-Newman was really, really good, because I got to learn about how to develop a player from the inside out, from the heart. And he was the all-time winningest coach and had won 300 ball games, so that part was phenomenal. And then having a chance to go work for Mike Houston at JMU and at East Carolina, you understood about how to develop a mentality of a team, how to go about from an organizational standpoint, making sure everybody was on the same page in the details, and then having a chance to work for Coach Sack, who's one of the top play callers in the game, and learning from him and what his process is about going to call a game, and the growth and development that I've had in the past 2 seasons, going on 3 now. Those things have been tremendous. Yeah. So back then, when I was just a young coach kind of coming up in the game, I had that vision and that dream, and I just knew that I had to work to go get it.
Amen. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time, man. Before I let you go, if you wouldn't mind sharing your Twitter account so guys can keep up with you, ask questions, all that good stuff.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is just my name, @DarrellSims. You guys can give me a follow, and my DMs are always open for any questions or anything.
We'll make sure to link that in the show notes, man. And best of luck, and look forward to seeing you in Nashville in 2024, okay?
I appreciate you.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter @CoachMarioPrice. And remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.